Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. The brain is a pretty cool organ, but sometimes it can fail us, like when we forget someone's name or blank on a test. But how can someone just forget something like that? Well, to start off, I want you to imagine what a penny looks like. You're probably imagining Abraham Lincoln looking off to the right and that the coin is copper. But you probably didn't recall the phrase above the Lincoln Memorial on the back of the penny. If you did, congrats. But the reason we may have not remembered every single aspect of the coin is because, frankly, it doesn't matter. All we need to know is how to distinguish a penny from any other coin, so we only remember the important parts and store them in our long-term memory. All of the small details of any experience, like you watching this video, for example, are combined into one event in your brain's hippocampus. You are essentially a network of neurons that records the association linked to the memory. And any of those associations, like hearing the name Blocko, can bring back that memory. But problems arise when there is more than one memory associated with a given cue. If you ever met someone who looks like an old friend, it may be difficult to remember this new person's name, because that face or and the memories are interfering with each other. Decay theory states that a memory slowly fades over time if it's not rehearsed often. So if you do not frequently think about something, you'll forget it. It makes sense, but you also have to be paying attention in the first place if you ever want to recall that information. So what is something that you always forget?
Today I'm with Becky Hill, Boss Training Manager, and we're going to...
Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. Say you're riding on a brand new roller coaster at an amusement park. It's pretty fun, but the fact that it's new is what drew you in. But Blocko, you say, I don't like new things. Well, I've got news for you. Anyway, there's actually a reason to believe that humans prefer new things. I mean, you see that in action all the time in marketing. Brands will repackage their products to make them more appealing. And a lot of the time, this works. But why? Well, part of the reason has to do with the fact that novelty piques our attention. I mean, if you were on your daily commute to work and you saw someone driving a hot dog-shaped car, chances are that's gonna capture your attention more than the road signs. And it should. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. We would use our time and energy noticing new things rather than familiar and boring ones. And believe it or not, your brain is hardwired to prefer novelty. In an experiment, volunteers were shown 4 cards with pictures of landscapes on them. Each card was associated with a certain probability of winning money. But interestingly, when new cards were introduced, the volunteers chose that card over a known money-winning card, thinking the new card will have a higher reward. The striatum, part of the brain's reward system, became active during these novel choices. And it's thought that dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation, is the culprit. Apparently, novelty helps drive our behavior when making choices. But wait, there's more. Novel situations can actually promote your memory. See, when you experience a novel situation, your hippocampus processes the information and sends dopamine to the brain's substantia nigra and ventral tegmental area. This encourages even more dopamine release, and this loop regulates the entry of information to your long-term memory. In fact, Joshua Foer, a freelance journalist, wrote a book about how novel, exotic ideas can help your memory. Try this out. Next time you have to buy groceries, write a list, and then imagine each item on that list in a bizarre situation in your home. Maybe a dozen eggs are singing Adele songs in your shower, or maybe carrots are playing poker in your living room. Regardless of the situations, if you do this, you probably won't need that list when you get to the store. The novel ideas have done their job. This episode of Life Noggin was proudly brought to you by the all-new Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. It's time for another Q&A. Let's say that you are on a date. You and your partner order some food at a nice restaurant. You decide to get the steak. But what caused you to choose that particular item? Was it your free choice? Or was it predetermined? Our intuition tells us that we are the ones who made the decision. We like to think that we have control over our minds, what we think and what we do. But in 1983, Benjamin Libet performed an experiment that sparked a lot of controversy. In the experiment, he had a volunteer make a decision about when to do a simple action, such as flicking the wrist. They announced out loud when they made the decision while the activity of their motor cortex was being recorded. Shockingly, the motor cortex became active before the conscious decision was made. It appeared like one's free will was just an illusion. And while Lebet himself even doubted the experiment's ability to answer the question of whether or not we have free will, it got a lot of people thinking, are our actions truly free? A while ago we made a video about the unconscious mind, and in that video we discussed the concept of priming, meaning that certain events have an effect on how we behave. For example, seeing a briefcase will make people more competitive. They may think that they're acting freely, but they don't realize the briefcase had an effect. So some argue that free will is just an illusion, and we are simply not aware of the causes of our actions. But with all that said, what does physics have to say about free will? Well, Sir Isaac Newton would argue that everything you do is predetermined. See, according to his laws of physics, the world was deterministic. Everything that happened in the past had an effect on the future. So the fact that you ordered that simmering steak on your date was always meant to be. But this begs the question, is anyone morally responsible for their actions? Should Jeffrey Dahmer be punished for killing and eating people if it was destined to happen? You can see where this can get a bit controversial and creepy. No, hey, get away from me. This was not an invitation for you guys. Anyway, so then there's quantum physics. While Newton's laws are deterministic, the behavior of some atomic particles is inherently unpredictable. So some philosophers think that free will makes use of this randomness, allowing for us to make free, undetermined decisions. But can these tiny effects make up the macro-level concept of free will? That's still under debate. So what do you think? You clicked on this video seemingly using your free will. Do you think you truly made that decision? Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. One of the simplest questions can be the most complex, and sometimes they don't have answers. We here at Life Noggin wanted to explore these questions in a series called Q&A. Let's start off with the big one. What is time? We have a pretty good idea of time. We use clocks to measure it, and it seems to pass by. But is time real? Well, that depends on who you ask. Some philosophers like Aristotle would say that time is relational. It's the measure of change. Imagine that everything in the universe stopped moving. All particles have come to a halt, and you are unable to experience the world around you. Would time still pass in such a universe? Sir Isaac Newton would say yes. He claimed that time and space will exist whether or not there are events that happen. He viewed time as absolute, meaning that someone on the North Pole would experience time the same way as someone on Venus, assuming, of course, that that person can survive intense heat. But there is a big issue here. Thanks to Einstein's theory of relativity, we know that not everyone experiences events in time the same way. Say that you see two flashes of lightning strike the ground at the same moment. To you, these events happen simultaneously, but to someone traveling close to the speed of light relative to the ground, one lightning flash may appear to happen before the second. In other words, an event in your present is in someone else's future. This contradicts presentism, which states that only the present moment is real and the past and future are not. So that lightning flash is both real and not real, which surely makes no sense. Instead, the block universe theory says that time is the fourth dimension, and the past, present, and future are all equally real. The present is just subjective. Of course, there are problems with this theory, and many others have tried to describe time and whether or not it is just in our minds. As of right now, we don't have any answers. But regardless of your philosophy about the future, we will hopefully have answers by then. Let me know what you think time is. Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. So there's no denying that space is incredible. It's a massive, mysterious thing that the world is still trying to understand. With so many people wondering about the final frontier, there are gonna be a few myths that pop up. Life Noggin is here to debunk 5 of those myths, and give you some far-out info in the process. Let's do this. Myth number 1, there's a dark side of the moon. Perhaps brought about by the Pink Floyd album, there's a myth that says that one side of the moon is constantly bathed in light, while the other is in a constant darkness. This isn't true at all. The moon is tidally locked to the Earth so that one side always faces our planet. This means it orbits its own axis once per Earth month. So it has a day and a night, just a day that lasts 2 Earth weeks and a night that lasts the same. Number 2, NASA takes up almost a quarter of the government budget. NASA has never had that much money, not by a long long shot. The peak of NASA's budget was in 1966 when the agency was pushing to complete the Apollo lunar landing by the end of the decade. At that point, NASA was getting 4.4% of the GDP. Funding started dropping the next year and has been hovering on average around the 1% mark. The agency has never had 25% of the GDP, but could you imagine what we could do if we had that kind of money for space exploration? Are you listening, government? Number 3. Astronauts buried their poo on the moon. This is definitely a weird one, but one people have wondered about because, well, you generally don't leave your leavings out in the open. But NASA didn't teach its astronauts to bury their poop. They didn't even send them up there with much of a bathroom. During moonwalks, NASA actually diapered its astronauts. It was the simplest solution. Use a diaper and then wash it off when you're back in the lunar module. Luckily, none of the astronauts used their moon diapers because there was no hot water in the lunar module. Number 4. Space has sound. Every science fiction movie with an epic space battle has classic laser sounds and the explosions of those lasers blasting apart spaceships. But the reality is there's no sound in space. Sound is actually a wave, and that wave needs a medium, like the Earth's atmosphere, to go from the source of the sound to your ears. In a vacuum, without any medium for sound waves to travel through, there is no sound. Sorry, George Lucas, space battles are really silent. Number 5. As children, we all grew up seeing the sun as a yellow circle in a blue sky over a field. Or if you were a more creative kid, it was a quarter circle in the corner of the paper with yellow rays streaming out of it. But the sun isn't yellow, and it doesn't actually shoot out perfect yellow rays. That yellow hue that you see is just an effect of our atmosphere. That's because it's a main sequence star with a temperature of about 10,340 degrees Fahrenheit. Whew, that means it could only be white. Cool, huh? Did you learn something today? If so, click that like button and answer us this. If you could name your own planet, what would it be called? If you want to know even more about space, check out my friend Amy over at Vintage Space who made this video possible. Or watch our video on the history of the internet. I'm Blocko. This has been Life Noggin. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to keep on thinking.
Okay, so yeah, now is the end of the vid. I just recorded this so I can post up another vid because I don't know what else to do. So yeah, I hope you liked the vid. Subscribe to my channel, show it to your family and friends, and also go and subscribe to Life Noggin. And see ya. Bye.